My name is Matt Tanner. At 8 years old, I rolled pretzels for my dad's pretzel stores. Fast forward to today, I do multi-unit franchise deals and help entrepreneurs build their businesses. This is Franchisees United. What's going on, guys? Matt Tanner here with the Franchisees United podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of bringing on a good friend of mine, Josh Miller, who's in the credit card processing industry. What's going on, Josh?
What's up, Matt? Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely. How's the new dad life going?
Oh, it's amazing. I love it, man. I come home and I just spend, time just falls off the clock. It's the funnest thing ever.
A boy or girl?
It's a girl.
Girl?
A little girl, yeah. She's about...
First one?
Yeah, first one, about a month old. So it's exciting, man. It's fun.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So I guess, having you on and launching this podcast, our goal as Franchisees United is we want to talk about clear-cut stuff and bringing value to franchise owners all over the world.
Absolutely.
I know the credit card processing business is your industry.
Mm-hmm.
You know it like the back of your hand, right?
Yes.
So I kind of want to talk about, first of all, let's get the audience a little familiar with you, how you got started in the industry, your expertise and knowledge, and
Absolutely.
What you do, I guess, day to day.
Yeah, so my background, I went to UCF for finance, got out of school, and was kind of like, all right, well, what's next? I ran into an old family friend. He was in the lead generation business, and he's like, come sell leads with me. I said, okay, well, what does that mean? I have no idea what that is. So immediately I started with him, and, the lead business really gave me an idea of learning a lot of different industry types and understanding a little bit about a lot, if that makes sense. So I got, familiar with working with different business owners that were selling different types of products. And then over time, that kind of got me interested in selling my own products. So I became an advertiser online. I also own call centers where I sold different products. And, in that world, you kind of have to, merchant processing is such a huge component of that, campaign or business. So I had to really learn by, the hard way, kind of being a merchant first. So I think that helps me a lot applying my knowledge in the past to current merchants, because I'm not just a merchant processing guy. I was a merchant in the past, so I know what to look for. I know what type of, different programs and different things in order to
It's interesting you say that, because the best franchisors were franchisees.
Right.
So when they know what it's like to be in the franchisee's shoes, that's how they really build great companies and great franchisor brands, because it's just empathy. They know what it's like to be a franchise owner. So I think it speaks a lot about your guys' services, as you know what it's like to be on the other end.
Right.
And I think, me in particular, that's why I love working with you guys, is I've had credit card processing partners in the past, and it has been such a headache. I mean, communication to me is the biggest thing. Credit cards hitting the bank account on time.
Right.
And then being able to reach out and understand what's going on in the process. And then empty promises all the time. I mean, I can't tell you you're getting this fee. And I know it varies based on the card they're using. Is it a debit card? What type of credit card? What brand is it? And I want to dive into all of that stuff a little bit today. But like I said, I just can't tell you how many times I've dealt with bad experiences in this industry. And although it might be a quote-unquote boring topic to some business owners, it's something that this is money directly out of their bottom line and out of their pocket.
Absolutely.
So I kind of want to dive right into it here. What do you feel about the industry? Like, what's going on right now, and what kind of differentiates what you guys do versus a lot of other credit card processors? Absolutely.
So there's a lot of different, programs and pricing structures out there. And unfortunately, a lot of merchants are kind of stuck on old, outdated pricing. So a lot of them don't have representation. So a lot of times you ask a merchant, hey, who's your current credit card person? Oh, I have no idea. Oh, I have First Data. I'm on TSYS. They really don't understand. They don't have a go-to person. So for us, the key is to obviously be transparent, be educational, but also be there for them at any time. So not only do we have a 24/7 support line, but most of my clients have my direct cell phone number. So if something happens, they call me, because at the end of the day, if you can't accept payments, your business is not running. So I feel as if it's my business when it's their business. So I really care a lot. Right now the industry is kind of going towards a cash discount model. What we're seeing a lot now, based on the Dodd-Frank Act, there was an amendment by Dick Durbin, the senator of Illinois, and it basically allowed surcharging. So merchants allowed to pass the credit card processing fee to the customer for using a card. So we're seeing a huge increase in merchants that are willing to offer a cash discount, essentially. So it would be a 4% surcharge.
And is that when you said cash discount? What do you mean exactly by that?
Yeah, so it was surcharging where there's a 4% fee to use a credit card, but they kind of flipped it and call it like a cash discount where there's an incentive to use cash. So it's a non-cash adjustment.
So not debit cards, just strictly cash.
Right. So you can anytime you use a non-cash payment method, there's going to be a 4% charge. So if you want to avoid that 4%, there's a cash discount by using cash.
That's the pass the fee model?
Yeah, so that's our passthefee.com model. That's getting very popular in the country. It's taking over, especially for a lot of the smaller mom and pop businesses. Obviously we think that there's going to be more of adoption rate over the next couple of years, seeing bigger franchises get on it. Mainly the reason why is because the cost of accepting credit cards continues to go up, and these merchants are really not making a lot of money once it eats into their bottom line. Like you were saying, it's a huge portion of their business, of their profit margin is going to credit cards. All these people, the consumers, have their cash back, their reward, their miles for their airline. So all the benefits are really coming out of the merchant's pocket. So this program is kind of shifting towards that.
So let me tell you, I actually got approached when I was in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, about a year or two ago, and I actually got approached to do the pass the fee model. They didn't call it that, but, I don't know what their saying was or their business, but I have a buddy of mine that had a business in the mall near my pretzel store, my Auntie Anne's store, and he was like, Matt, why are you not doing that? And to me, obviously, I'm obviously in the food industry. Auntie Anne's Pretzels was my origin story. I do Tropical Smoothie Cafe now. I always, as a business owner, I'm like concerned: is the customer? Am I going to lose customers over a small charge? So, what do you think about that?
Yeah, so that's always the biggest thing. How are my customers going to react? What are my customers going to say? In most cases, a lot of frequent customers, they go back to the same place because you have a good restaurant, you have a good good service or good product that you're giving them, so they're going to be loyal customers. They're going to come back. They always do have the option to use cash, but I think explaining to them and educating them that, hey, we're a small business, we're trying to prevent.
But that's tough, right?
Yeah,
to do that to every customer.
It is. Yeah, it's tough to do that, but at the same time, it's like, listen, instead of raising our prices, what we're doing is we're actually giving a cash discount. So really, instead of penalizing them to use a credit card, you're really incentivizing them to use cash.
So my thing is, let's say, being in the food industry, let's say the average ticket's $10. What is that they're paying with a credit card? What does that physically cost the customer?
So, wait, repeat what do you mean?
So, like, they're using a credit card.
Oh, okay.
The grand total of the transaction is $10 that they're paying the business.
Right. So, there's a 4% surcharge, so it'd be $10.40.
Okay.
Yep.
And you just have to have, a disclaimer at your register? Or how
right.
Does that
so,
work?
there's a couple rules in order to be compliant for cash discount. They need to have signage in front of their door, at the front of their door, or their store, rather, or near the register. And then we register them with the card brands to make sure that they're compliant. So if there's ever a situation with a secret shopper or something like that on Visa and MasterCard's end, they're registered, they're completely compliant in order to be allowed to surcharge or cash discount.
Okay, gotcha. So let's take a step back because, the pass the fee model is a great option, it sounds like, for depending on the business. And I think a lot of consumers wouldn't honestly even realize they're paying a credit card fee based on, it just depends on the transaction, obviously. But let's take a step back and break down what credit card processing truly is.
Okay.
From the merchant's point of view to you to the credit card companies, because I don't think I would be willing to bet 8 or 9 out of 10 business owners don't truly understand it. Especially franchisees, they have all these other things to worry about.
Of course,
they're not even looking at their credit card statements 9 out of 10 times. I would say. So break that down for me. What exactly is it? Yeah,
so the credit card industry, not being familiar with it, looking at a statement, it's a very confusing breakdown. That's why for us, we do statement analysis all day. So we'll look at a statement, we'll break it down, we'll take every junk fee out of there. We'll literally show you exactly what you need to pay and what you don't need to pay, and where those little hidden, little things are where the processor or the bank's making a lot of money where, you shouldn't be paying.
Right.
So the main thing to understand in credit card processing is understanding interchange. Interchange is basically the cost per card, so the cost to the merchant to accept that credit card, and that's based on the bank issuing the credit card and the deal that they have set up with Visa, MasterCard, or American Express. So, for example, depending on what type of awards they're going to give, depending if the card is keyed or swiped physically there at the location, there's going to be a specific predetermined cost of interchange to accept that card to the merchant. So most credit card companies, what they're going to do is they're going to put you on either an interchange plus pricing, where the plus is pretty much their profit that's split between the processor and the bank.
Is that more common than not?
Yeah, so these days, interchange plus is the most common pricing structure we're seeing.
Okay.
It's obviously, it got introduced a couple years back.
Because it seems like it's about the transparency with that.
Correct, yeah. So a lot of people were on bundled rates and tiered rates. The tiered is very confusing for a lot of merchants because there's a qualified, a non-qualified. And what happens is they don't really know what type of card falls into what type of bucket. So when they look at their merchant statement, I mean, even their application, they're like, okay, well, what does this mean? Then there was the bundled rate where, they would look at a statement. They say, all right, well, you're taking this card type. So your average cost is this. We're going to bundle your rate at this. So there's a lot of different ways they did things. Interchange Plus is really the best. Main reason, in my opinion, is because you're taking advantage of the discount for accepting debit. So like I said, different interchange, different costs per cards. Yeah. Like taking a debit card has a flat rate on interchange, which is 22 cents per transaction plus 5 basis points.
Okay. So and explain to me what a basis point is.
So a basis point, 50 basis points is 0.5%. So it's just fractions of a percent, basically.
Gotcha.
So, 5 basis points is very inexpensive. So a lot of people that are on Square, for example, they say, all right, well, I'm paying a flat rate of 2.75 if it's, swiped, or 3.25 if it's keyed in. I like my pricing because it's very transparent. It's very clear. Yes, it is. But depending on what type of cards you're accepting, what type of average ticket you have, you're vastly overpaying because you're paying way higher than that flat rate for the debit, which is called the Durbin rate. So it's important to really, understand that, like, most consumers, they use debit cards. The average for I know online it's about 50 to 60%. In an average middle America Auntie Anne's pretzel place, they're probably taking about 50% debit
of the card transactions
of all the card types they're accepting. Okay. It's typically consumer debit is very big. So
there's a lot of business owners that they're not getting the benefit of the debit card users.
Correct. Yeah, they're not. So they're not on Interchange Plus. So they're not saving the money on debit now. Because of that 22 cent per transaction flat rate, depending on the business type, like an Auntie Anne's pretzel, for example, if their average ticket is very low, that might kind of hurt them. So there's different bundled rates that can help them, or flat rates. So what we do is we really take a look at, the amount of transactions, the average ticket size. We'll take a look at, all these different pieces, all these different components to see what is the best pricing structure they should be on.
Gotcha. So you guys do those audits for people for free?
Absolutely.
So if someone listening right now wanted to get an audit, maybe they're a multi-unit franchise owner, or maybe they just have one location, how could they get in touch with you? What's the best way to...
Yeah, so the best thing to do is to get a merchant statement from your current provider, and then either, call us direct or email us.
What's your email for that? If let me just put this out there. So if you're listening today and you want to get a free audit from Josh's company to see how he can save you guys money, I want you guys to send an email to Josh, and in the subject put Audit Franchisees United. And what is that email address they could send it to you?
Josh@elevatedpayments.io.
Okay, and also we'll put that up on the video. But one more time for us, what is it?
Josh@elevatedpayments.io.
Josh@elevatedpayments.io. Okay. Yeah, because look, I've learned from the food industry specifically, and then obviously the franchise world, if you're not counting your pennies, it just adds up so much.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And obviously, look, from a franchisee perspective, it's not something you enjoy doing. I'm very offensive and aggressive. It's how much revenue can I bring into my franchise? And that's why it's important to surround yourself with a partner or an employee or an accountant or whomever that is actually looking at the expenses going out. And credit card processing fees is something that's not even talked about in the industry. If you're in the food business, it's like, okay, what's your food cost? What's your labor? What are all my controllable and uncontrollable costs? And it's like not even brought up. It's just a fee in your bank account.
It's an afterthought. It's like a mystery to most people.
Yeah. Like let's say I have 10 franchise locations, and let's say each location's doing $500,000 a year in credit card sales, right? How much is that? That's $5 million a year in credit card sales, right? What is the difference? Like, for example, if I was on the Interchange Plus, I'm paying, what is the fee? it's cost plus, right?
Yeah, it's cost plus. So interchange, whatever your interchange rate ends up being. So it's important to, depending on where you're located or what type of card mix you're taking, the interchange cost is going to vary. So even if you have the same business in 2 locations, the more affluent area is going to have a higher interchange cost because it's likely, you're likely getting more Amexes, rewards cards, corporate cards, elite cards. So you'll see an increase on interchange. So I think it throws a lot of merchants off because they're saying to us, okay, what's my rate? What's my rate? What's my rate? And I explain to them, well, listen, it's important to understand interchange and the fact that we're giving you true cost.
Yep.
So that true cost is going to
vary. Because they don't get
that's
going. So that cost is going to the credit card companies.
To the card brands, yeah. So Visa, MasterCard, Discover, and then
that's what the interchange is going directly to Visa, MasterCard.
That's how they make their money.
That's how they get paid.
Yes.
And then the credit card processing company would get the margin, or if they just charge the cost plus, right?
Yeah, so what we'll do, so the plus is basically the amount that the processor gets, and they split that with the bank.
Mm-hmm. Is that a 50-50 split?
It depends. Okay. In most cases, it's typically favored to the processor because the banks make it up in volume.
Right.
So yeah, typically it's more favored towards the processor.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So, I had some when I had franchises in Tuscaloosa, I was approached by someone who pretty much pitched the pass the fee concept to me, and I wasn't sure whether that was the right decision for me. And I think each franchisee has to, run the numbers and figure out does it make sense or not, right?
Yeah, it's a huge boost to the bottom line. Some businesses it's harder to raise prices than others. Yeah. So sometimes you can just raise your price and 4% and then just offer them the cash discount that way. It is a little tough, but at the end of the day, we tell them to at least try it, give it a try, see what happens. If once in a while you need to give 4% back to a customer to keep them happy, it's fine. Yeah. What we're seeing is we're really shocked by the adoption rate on it. There's businesses that come to us all the time, like, you know what, put me on the program, I don't care. And I'm like, well, I don't know if your business type's the best for this. And, it ends up working out. I mean, we very, very rarely see merchants switch back to traditional pricing models. Right. I mean, once in a while, but very, very rare. And we're seeing it work in doctors' offices, obviously QSRs and stuff like that. We're seeing it, retail stores. I mean, you name it. We've pretty much done. Automotive is big too. So we're seeing it a lot.
Right. And there's a lot of franchises out there in pretty much all those spaces you just mentioned, maybe minus actually probably the doctor's offices as well. Mm-hmm. But, food industry, retail, franchisees that have businesses all over. And the biggest thing for me is if it's one location, it's not a ton of money, but these multi-unit guys, there's companies that have 50 and 100 franchise locations with one brand.
Right.
And that's where the volume just really adds up. So, I don't know whether I agree with pass the fee. I think it depends on the model and the business. But I know one thing, I think cost plus, or what's it called?
Interchange plus.
Interchange plus. I think that makes the most sense. And I think, this is just my perspective from the outside looking in, but I can't believe there are business owners or franchisees that don't have at least that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you definitely want to take a look at your statements, and pretty often, at least annually, and take a look at the different fees. I mean, it's not just the discount rate. A lot of times it's your transaction fees, your authorization fees, your batch fees. I mean, there's all these different little things that add up. Some of it doesn't need to be charged, and it is charged.
I was actually just going to ask you, what are the red flags? If anyone opens up their credit card statement, and I'm guilty of it, when you're running businesses, it's like the last thing on your mind.
Right.
You're worried about your staff. You're worried about your top line revenue, controlling your inventory, your marketing. And it's like, do you really have time to look at your credit card statements and dissect it? And that's why it's either important to have a partner that you trust in the credit card processing industry, or, a CPA or bookkeeper that is really dissecting that stuff, because it's just, it's like my good friend says, money saved is money earned.
Of course.
And that money that's saved goes right to your bottom line, and it's not going out the door to other people.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, little things to see is a lot of junk fees that are charged monthly. So, typically you want to be paying, around $8 to $10 a month on a statement fee or account on file fee. There's a lot of extra.
And that's what the processor's charging?
Yeah, typically the processor's charging that.
So like an average number is like $8 or $10 a month?
Yeah, that's normal. We'll see it higher than that, and then we bring that down. That's not a huge one. A lot of merchants aren't PCI compliant. We see that all the time.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing less of that in the franchise world because they're so strict on it now. Mm-hmm. But I think that was a big issue years ago, and I think some brands are still getting there. They're not completely up to date. And then when you're in the franchise world, from the franchisor's perspective, they have to at times they have to upgrade their POS system, and then
absolutely
it's like this huge process.
It's a huge process. Yeah. So when you get a new account, there's about a 60 to 90 day grace period in order to take a PCI questionnaire, and then you get a certificate that you hand into the processor, and then you're not billed that PCI fee. So
first of all, what is PCI compliant? Because this is probably the one phrase that people talk about all the time.
Right.
But what does it actually mean?
It's the payment card industry. It's basically an entity that controls the storage and data for security reasons for credit card numbers because of all the theft and all this stuff like that. So it's very important that if you're storing credit cards, you're transacting credit cards, you need to make sure that it's encrypted, it's tokenized. No one's able to kind of hack your system. Mm-hmm. So they ask you a series of questions to make sure
the process of becoming PCI compliant is pretty much passing a survey.
Pretty much, right? Yeah. To pay the minimum on PCI fees to the processor, you have to take a questionnaire. They're going to ask you a lot of questions. Are you storing full card data? All these basic questions. That's to get that done. Then there's a PCI. There's different levels of PCI. So depending on the location. Yep. Now for restaurants, in my opinion, and you go to a restaurant, you give them your credit card, they walk, they go swipe it. That's not that PCI compliant to me. Back in the call center space, for PCI compliance, you can't have a pen on the desk. They have to enter it in tokenized into a portal. So it's very strict. But, when you deal with a checkbook at a restaurant, they have a pen, they have all this stuff. So what we're seeing now is a trend where it's pay at the table. So the waiters and waitresses.
A lot of the FSR brands are moving towards that now. And then even QSR models, they have the chip readers that face the customer. Yep. So the actual cashier is never even touching your credit card at times.
Which is great. Making sure you're EMV compliant is another huge one. That you're not swiping because for liability reasons on chargebacks and disputes, you're definitely going to win those in more cases when there's a chip present. Mm-hmm. It's actually a mandate. You're supposed to be EMV compliant or chip compliant right now.
Right.
The gas stations were the last ones to adopt it, but they are now. So the pay at the table thing is really big. Also the kiosks, the self-checkout kiosks, a lot of franchises are moving in that direction. We offer those as well. It's very popular in Europe. When I was in Europe for my honeymoon, I saw it everywhere. Everywhere I went, I had to place my own order, pick it up, use my own card. So we're seeing a bigger adoption in that as well in the franchise space. It also limits their labor costs,
of course.
So it helps a lot that way.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the bigger franchise brands are slowly getting the kiosk model going in. Yep. But even if you look at like a Wawa, which is corporately run.
Right.
But even with the kiosk model, it's saving labor, but then they still check out at the register with the person.
Right.
But there are a lot of kiosk models that you can pay right in it, which, I think it's obviously the entire future. When I had opened up my cheesesteak restaurant in Tuscaloosa, my original vision was actually to have a host and then employees to do food, not to have people literally the host just checks on everyone. Maybe if there's an older person or a really young person, helps them with the kiosk. But it's difficult. It's expensive to do a lot of kiosks.
Yeah, the upfront cost can be very, very expensive.
Yeah, a lot of programs that are leasing it or financing it.
Absolutely.
And, obviously as a big franchise brand, it's a huge step to take, for franchisors to go from just the traditional method to putting kiosks in all locations. And that's why you're seeing a lot of them, like a McDonald's, they're slowly implementing it and having a little bit of both and getting a feel for it. And,
right.
You'll see that the technology is obviously just huge. So,
yeah, that's definitely towards like you were asking earlier, what's kind of the direction the industry's going. I definitely pay at the table, the self-ordering kiosks. Those are all things that are huge. And when you talk about PCI compliance, there's nothing more PCI compliant than a customer just using their card right then and there, themselves are running the transaction instead of having it handed over to somebody. Mm-hmm. So that it also saves a lot in that aspect.
What about like the chip reader? Is there different rates on a chip card versus just swiping it?
So there's not a different cost on interchange. The biggest thing with interchange is card present or not card present, card not present. So if the card's present, it's cheaper because there's less risk to the bank.
Right.
If the card's not present, it's keyed in, then it is more expensive. So, if you're a restaurant owner and you're taking a lot of, over the phone orders, your interchange cost is going to be a little higher. It's very incremental. It's not a huge difference. But there is a difference in cost.
For sure. What is, one of my questions is there any horror stories or anything that has happened that you've seen that it's like people were literally just throwing money in the trash? Or
yeah, we see that a lot. I mean, we'll see people that are paying tiered rates that are super high for their industry, like a retail industry. Your credit card bill on average, let's just say your average ticket is not too low. It's whatever between $20 to $50. You're going to see around a 2% bill. 2.3, maybe a little less than 2%.
Yeah.
We see merchants that are on retail that are paying, up to like 3, 4, 5, 6%. It's crazy.
Is that just like a lack of integrity on the processor, or is it just like it's a business?
It could be. It could be.
What's your opinion on it?
Yeah, I mean, so that's outdated pricing is a big one. Maybe at one point they were accepting cards, a certain type of card, so they were on a bundled rate. Now they're no longer on that. The biggest thing was equipment leasing back in the day. So we've seen people that were paying, $200, $250 a month for just a desktop terminal. And, that now there's, very strict lease caps. So we can't even do that if we wanted to. And not that we would anyway, but,
right.
So we see merchants that were paying crazy high leases. And at one point, like I said earlier, without representation, there was people that just jumped in the industry, didn't really know what they were doing.
Yep.
They didn't really look long-term from the residual aspect of their profit. They were looking at it short-term. Hey, I get paid up front by the leasing company. I make my money there. If they process, great. If not, I don't care.
So short-sighted.
Yeah, short-sighted. So us, we're in this for the long haul. My one partner's been in it for 20 years. I've been in the payment space for about 8 years. So we're not going anywhere. We're long-term, and we want to make sure our merchants on the cheapest pricing possible, and just educating them, transparency, support. These are the things that are important to us.
Yeah, and I think I like that you said that because and that's what my brother and I's experience been with you guys, because like I said, I've told you this, I've had the worst experience with some people. I mean, I had a rep who made all these promises to me, and then I ended up selling my business, and I kept the entity and the bank account open,
right? Because
I was paying off things, obligations through the business, that even though the business was done, it was sold,
right,
I still had to pay existing obligations and taxes and different things out of the business. So foolish on my end, I guess, because I kept the business account open. She kept charging me every single month when I specifically sent her a form to close the account. And then she kept debiting every single month hundreds of dollars, and I guess it was fees for it not being active or hurting a certain amount of value.
Yeah, so back to the little hidden things, and there's so many little things. So there's a lot of times there's monthly minimums. So if you're not processing, the processor is going to say, well, we're putting a $150 monthly minimum on this account. So if the processing rate doesn't meet or exceed 150, you're paying that 150 no matter what. So monthly minimums is a big one. So you definitely got to keep a lookout for that.
Right.
ETFs as well. So if you close an account for whatever reason, there's an early termination fee that they'll charge you.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So you want to be very on top of that when you get your merchant application originally.
Yep.
Check to see if there's an early termination fee. You don't want one. The standard credit card agreement is 3 years. So after 3 years, you don't have to worry about that. But if you need to close an account because you sold the business or something, you're switching into the new owner, you want to be on top of those types of things and the little fees. So monthly minimums could have been that. Could have been your PCI fees because maybe you weren't PCI questionnaire compliant. You didn't do the certificate. So
there's probably a number of things, because
it could be a couple different things.
Hundreds of dollars, and and then the worst part was that she promised she would reimburse it, and it never got reimbursed. And, it's one of those things as a business owner. Are you going to chase someone down over? You have so many things.
You got 100 things going on. Yep.
You trust that people are relationship oriented, and that's what we found with you guys, because, I know you guys are the type of people that if there's a miscommunication over a couple $100, you're not risking or jeopardizing the length of your relationship over it, which some people just don't get.
Right.
And this is for any industry or anything. Is we're always, me personally, it's all about relationships.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's not about how much can I make or you make off of me today. It's how can we all make money in the long run. And that's what I like about working with you guys, because at the end of the day, it's about having a long-term relationship where everyone wins. And I think that's what business is all about.
Yeah, I mean, you said it best. I mean, relationships, that was one of the things when I first got even into my, the lead generation industry is that, when you sell leads, you never know what's going to happen because at the end of the day, you don't know who sold it or whatever happened. So relationships are the key. So, hey, if something happens, I'm going to take care of it. I'm going to do everything in my power to make it right. So that's the mentality we have. And like I said earlier, like I feel like, if these business owners are down or there's an issue, they can't accept payment, like I feel it as if it's my business.
Absolutely.
And I know that every merchant, whether they're a small merchant and I'm not going to make $10 a month, I'll still take it because they might refer me to another person. And it all adds up at the end of the day. But referrals are key in our business. So, all the time we get, merchants say, you got to use my guy, you got to use my guy. And that's because of the relationship. We make sure we build rapport with our merchants and they trust us.
For sure. Well, look, man, I really appreciate you taking the time on here today.
Thank you, man.
I think this is something, again, that just people don't truly understand. And it was me at one point. So, I've been in those shoes and I just want people to understand what it truly is. And I think we did a good job of kind of articulating that and what they should look at, what the average franchisee or business owner really should kind of look out for. So, I'm hoping that they got some value from this. And, if they need an audit, again, what's your email address?
Yeah, so you can email me at josh@elevatedpayments.io. We can set up a call. Not only is it just, doing the statement analysis and seeing how much money we can save you on a monthly basis, but in addition to that, maybe upgrading your POS, giving you a more streamlined solution. We now have systems that will integrate with all the different delivery services, so you don't have to have like 20 different iPads open for all your orders. There's a lot of other value-added services that we offer besides just credit card processing that your current provider or whoever you're dealing with, you might just not know about. So, we really look at every business and try to maximize ROI, limit, high cost exposure. So that's what we want to accomplish with the merchants.
So what's the one thing before we get off here, even if they don't reach out to you, what's the one thing that they should do immediately? Because what we've learned is people love to learn and educate and consume content, but it's like then they're not taking action with it. So what's the first thing they should do after listening to this today or tomorrow to look at the
first thing, obviously pull your merchant statement, kind of do some basic math and see what your overall effective rate is, see what you're paying, contacting your current provider if you have to and asking for a reduction of a rate. There's a lot of different things you can do, making sure you're PCI compliant, making sure you're not paying very high for authorizations or transactions. It's just really taking a look at your merchant statement and making sure, and also try to find the application that you originally signed if possible and see what type of pricing structure you're on, because you can call your current provider and say, hey, listen, I'm on this outdated pricing, or am I on the most recent pricing? So really just kind of digging into it. And there's a ton of very valuable information online for merchants. There's tons of YouTube videos and stuff like that. Credit card processing have been around for so long that you can really become a student of the business, because it is a huge part of your business, even though it's not maybe your main focus, but understanding it as much as possible is really important and will help your overall business succeed.
Perfect. Appreciate the time today.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me, Matt.